Hi everyone, my name is Charlie and this is Charlie, and today we are going to be doing the Victorian literature tag, which was created about 10 years ago by Katie of Books and Things and the Victober hosts of Victober 2017, which I believe were Marissa of Blatantly Bookish and Kate of Kate Howe. However, there may have been more at the time, I'm not sure. Anyway, people might be wondering, why haven't Charlie and Charlie put out a video together in a while? People have been questioning, has this been a feud like Betty Davis and Joan Crawford? Was there a contract dispute? Did Charlie go to Brazil for a butt lift? All of these things.
Thanks.
And the fact of the matter is simply that we just didn't want to.
I just enjoy talking to it because we talk for those of you that don't know, we talk well, we message each other virtually every single day and we talk every single Tuesday.
We
And we
didn't
just like talking
plan,
to each other.
but other things arose this year that meant that the videos that we did have planned for you didn't occur. However, we are back with two videos today, one on this channel and one over on Charlie's channel. And we might even get to talking about Charlie and Charlie's Christmas Cracker 2024. But first, let's go through this tag, which I'm enforcing upon Charlie to celebrate Victober. What was the first piece of Victorian literature you ever read?
I mean, this is discounting anything I read when we was at school because I can't really remember that. I just can't remember it.
I mean, it
So
was so long ago.
anyway, thank you for that. I think it was Agnes Grey because I think it was before I had my booktube channel. I was watching Katie from Books and Things and their Victober videos, and they were all. I remember them talking a lot about Agnes Grey, and so I think that that was the first one I read as I started to get back in, started to get into classic literature. So
As much as we spoke, I didn't know that Agnes Grey was your first, but that is a good one to start with. For me,
it was
I am
short.
going with a book that I read at school, but I didn't read it for school, and it is a short one, and this was A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. I can never remember when I originally read it, because at one point I think I had about four copies. This was the first one I ever read, and I tend to reread it every Christmas because that's just the type of nerd that I am.
I love that.
And what is your favourite Victorian novel?
Again, I haven't really got an answer for this because I would have said a while ago, I probably would have said Jane Eyre, but I feel like I don't necessarily think that's true anymore because I think I've read other novels I really enjoy probably more. And also, in order for me to call it a favorite, I probably would have to reread a few of the ones that I've loved. So, I'm probably going to give like a similar to what you've just mentioned, A Christmas Carol, because that's the one I've reread the most. So I probably would say A Christmas Carol, just based upon having reread it the most.
For me, I'm actually changing from the answer that I wrote down earlier, and it is a departure from what I said when I first did this video a few years back, and it's Framley Parsonage by Anthony Trollope. I was trying to remember which one of the Barsetshire Chronicles it was that I preferred the most, because there's a few in the middle which get somewhat similar in that they all have the question of love fighting money, and I couldn't remember which one was the one that I liked. And that, well, I like them all, but I couldn't remember which one was the one where I was happy with a certain character's decisions. And I think it was Family Parsonage. If anyone knows me and Dr. Thorne, and I'll get to this later in the video, I am still on that whole justice for Mary Thorne train.
I do
Um,
remember you loving that book, actually. I do remember you loving it.
okay, so then we move on to who is your favourite Victorian author?
I don't know. It's hard to really like. I'm going to say Dickens, but that's because again, I've read probably more of his work and enjoyed more of his work as opposed to like Charlotte Bronte or whatever. I'm not bad mouthing Charlotte Bronte, but
All I was going to say was I've also put Charles Dickens, despite the fact that I've read books by other authors that I have probably liked more. For whatever reason, Victorian literature in my mind has always been synonymous with Charles Dickens. And the first time I ever did this video, every single answer was just me enthusing about Charles Dickens, his work, and his characters. As much as I enjoy Anthony Trollope, he's probably the next in line after Dickens, and he writes very clean books. If you were like trying to get into Victorian literature from the modern day, I would always say go to Anthony Trollope above Dickens because of how grandiloquent Dickens is. But there is just something about his language and the way he writes that I find has just a bit more magic in it than other writers, and I can't explain that.
Yeah, I do understand that
That's
completely.
why I continue to say Charles Dickens. And then we have your favorite Victorian literary couple. Now, I had an idea of who this might be for you, but I want to see whether I'm right.
I'm gonna say an answer, which I feel like this is gonna come up a lot in the rest of the answers because I just love them so much. And it's Bathsheba Everdeen and Gabriel Oak because
Yes, I was correct.
I just love them so much. And like also, we should have probably said to people actually that there'll be loads of spoilers for Victorian novels in this because there will be.
And
Like,
they've had the time to read them. If they ain't done it yet, it's their problem. It ain't
I
mine.
mean, I just love. I like as a couple, I feel like they make a lot of sense. In a lot of Victorian books that I have personally read, I haven't read a lot. Yeah, I feel like some of the couples you like them at the time, but actually when you think about them, they're quite problematic, and like they've got their own sort of issues. And yeah, so whereas with Bathsheba, Everdeen, and Gabriel, they just make so much sense together. I just feel like they really balance each other out. They make each other like not make each other better, but I feel like they bring out the best qualities in each other. So yeah, I just and yeah, I just love them.
No, I agree with you, and that's the whole reason that I chose not to put them here for me because I knew that you were going to choose them. I could just sense it. I felt it in my waters. For me, I put Mary Thorne and Frank Gresham from Dr. Thorne, despite the fact that I actually spent the entire book getting really annoyed at the Greshams because of the whole love and money aspect. And everyone was like, "Yeah, you're a lovely girl, Mary, but we don't want you marrying our son." And the entire time, I was just like in this whole mood of take the money and run, love. I did leave the novel wanting to see them together, but I also left the novel thinking you'd have been much better off. Like if I were to write this novel nowadays, Mary would be like, right, sod you all, I'm off. But this was the Victorian times. Then we are on to your favorite Victorian villain.
The character I'm going to say, I wouldn't say is necessarily a villain, but they've definitely got like a character arc, definitely.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say a character that I just completely love so much, Abel Magwitch. I just love Abel Magwitch, and actually, me and Charlie both read this book, a similar sort of. Did we? No, you've. No, we did. We were.
No,
No, you were listening to it, weren't you? You were re-listening
yeah,
to it
I was.
at the same time.
We listened to two different audiobooks.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
because
I'm
I
pretty
listened to
sure
the
we
one
were
by
listening
Matt
to two different
Lucas.
audiobooks.
Yeah,
Uh,
Matt Lucas.
we were supposed to be bloody reading it, but I was going so slowly because I was treating it like a radio play and dipping in and out of it. And then I came along and finished it a month after you had.
He's just such a good character. He's a really interesting character as well. He's not like it's not black or white with him. It's very yeah. He's very nuanced. I do think he's got a lot like he's very nuanced. It's complicated and I like it.
The one I've chosen for this is somebody who I don't believe is a villain, and it's Lydia Gwilt from Armadale by Wilkie Collins. Now, I do not like this book, and I don't like this book because of the demonization of Lydia Gwilt. Like, I feel this poor woman went through the ringer in her life, and I wanted the book from her perspective because I think that like I wanted this to be a revenge tale that it wasn't, basically. And every time you hear about this book, you hear about how it's a fantastic book because you get to hear from the villainess, and I think this woman was not a villain. These people have been horrible to her. She had been wronged. But I think that I also have a tendency to side with the villains in a lot of cases. So who am I to
That's
talk?
good though. It's good that you do that. I haven't read that one, so that's when even though the fact that you say it's not like the best, I'm
Well,
like,
no, it's not that it's Wilkie Collins writes how Wilkie Collins writes, and if you're looking for some good Wilkie Collins writing, then you're going to find it in Armadale because sometimes I am a bit like this over their books. But I just didn't feel like this character was a villain. We want justice for Mary Thorne. We want justice for Lydia Gwilt. Basically, there are a lot of female heroines from the Victorian era I don't think were done well. Next question I have is the favorite Victorian book where someone dies of consumption.
so it's Jane Eyre and obviously Helen Burns dies, the friend, and it's very sad. I just remember because obviously like that was like one of the first. Again, one of the early Daughters Victorian books that I read, and I remember being very affected by Helen dying because I was just like, oh, Helen, what? Like that's not fair. It's a bit, yeah, yeah.
I'm going back to my question that I said 4 years ago, because, or 5 years ago now, that I have absolutely no idea. There are so many books where somebody has died of consumption in the Victorian era because it was an easy way to off a character. I went back and watched other people's videos. I found out about somebody in Dombey and so on, and somebody else in North and South, and I'm like, yeah, consumption, tuberculosis, it was going around a lot. But I still can't think of any books where I've been like, "Ugh, yeah, I'm saddened by this death."
That's fair.
Yeah, there was one character where I thought, yeah, that's probably the standout death for me in a Victorian novel. And then I read it, and apparently she didn't die of consumption. So I was like, well, there you go. The only one I cared about.
Oh, what was it?
That was the old Curiosity Shop. Everyone talks about that, though. There's entire articles about the death that takes place in that book. The next question I have is the longest Victorian novel you've read.
I think, and again, I'm not entirely sure, but based upon the me looking this morning, I think it was David Copperfield.
Oh, that is a lengthy one.
That's like more than 1,000 pages, isn't it? So I think that's the longest one. I believe.
I couldn't be sure whether it was a Dickens or whether it was The Way We Live Now by Anthony Trollope for me. I've read some hefty Victorian books, and it's difficult to find out which ones are the longest because there's so many different
Different
editions.
editions, yeah.
When I was looking in comparison with Dickens, it was saying The Way We Live Now was the longest that I'd read, but that could be entirely wrong. Either way, that's what I'm saying today. The Way We Live Now, Anthony Trollope. It's a hefty tome, and I don't even think it's his longest book.
Yeah, well, definitely. I don't think David Copperfield's the longest either. So
No, I think
for him,
the video I was watching with Katie today,
Zombie and Son's quite chunky, isn't it?
it was either Bleak House or Little Dorrit
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
is his longest. Then we have Victorian author or book you love and feel is underrated.
So I'm going to go with, I'm actually going to cheat again. Shocking. I'm not going to go with a book. I'm going to say, because I was trying to think of one that's kind of underrated. All the ones I haven't aren't necessarily underrated. So I'm going to go with the short story, and I go with an Oscar Wilde short story, which actually a lot of Oscar Wilde short stories I don't actually enjoy that much. Sorry, but the rest I love his plays and I love his writing and love his novels. But anyway, so Sir Arthur Saville's Crime, and I just love that. I love that little short story. I read it a couple of years ago, and I think I was going to try and reread it last year. And I didn't actually manage it. It's like a very quirky, very quick, easy, fast-paced, obviously because it's a short story, and it's fun. It's a bit fun. So, yeah, and it's definitely underrated. I don't think that many people go on about it. So
Yeah, I think when it comes to Oscar Wilde, you're entirely right. It's this case of because he's got so many more famous works
yes,
that people don't necessarily think about that one. I've read that one and I wouldn't have even thought about what you were saying. So yeah, you're correct. I think people who know Victorian literature know this book, but there are a lot of people I've recommended this book to over the last year since I read it that have never heard of it before, and that is Diary of a Nobody by George Grossmith. This
okay.
is a very nice, short Victorian book, which is written in this diary format. Apparently, it was the forefront of books of the last 150 years or so that saw the rise in books written in the diary format. And it's this man, and a lot of the time I was reading it, I was reminded of My Family, the comedy, well, the British sitcom from what, 20 years ago.
I love
And
that.
this man is just wanting his son to get a job and move out of his house. And his son is so much of a dreamer. And this is just a really nice comedy that I swear is something that has inspired comedies in England, at least since its publication, because it's so full of like jokes and tropes that we've seen repeated, but it is incredibly humorous, nice and short, and I do recommend it for
I
Victor.
remember because we were talking the other day, and you said about that one to me because we were trying to work out my Victober TBR. Charlie was helping me, so yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, that is actually a great one for people who are looking for a book told in a different form. Then we have the most beautiful edition of a Victorian book that you own.
I've got a folio edition of Jane Eyre, and it's really really beautiful, and I love it.
I struggled with this one, as I struggled with it years ago as well, because all my Dickens books are still the Wordsworth Library editions. And one day I do think I'll update them and I'll get some nicer editions. And then, whilst I have all of the Folio Society editions of Anthony Trollope, they're not really much to look at. They're just blank covers. The inside's nice with the woodcut
And
illustration.
I mean, to be fair, I'd probably say like I don't think. I mean, there it is it is a pretty cover of the Jane Eyre, but like the thing I love about it is entirely what you just said. It's inside. It's a very beautiful object. It's a beautiful object to kind of own and just like go through.
And I was wondering about my Barnes and Noble edition of Dracula, which has very nice typography on the front of it. It's the converse of the Folio Society ones, really, in that it's got a very nice outside, but the inside's a bit bland and, just a block of text throughout, the same font and all that. I'm going to go with the Dracula one
I
because,
love Dracula. Dracula's a great Victorian book.
yeah,
I
and
love that.
there is a fantastic audiobook adaptation of that one as well. Then we have three unread Victorian books you want to try.
I've got four because I couldn't decide between them.
Obviously, that's not surprising at all.
No, it doesn't. We've got Tess of the D'Urbervilles because obviously now I've read Far from the Madding Crowd and loved Thomas Hardy. I've been putting off Thomas Hardy for years and I've suddenly finally read it this year. And I know Roz and so many other people as well, but specifically Roz has been telling me to read this for such a long time. Roz from Scully Landing about the books, and yeah, and so I've got to read it. So I definitely want to try.
I hear you mention Tessa the D'Urbervilles. I'm just like, don't do that to yourself. Don't do it. Like,
It is miserable,
I'm not saying
maybe.
it's not a good book. I'm not saying that,
It's
but oh
miserable.
my goodness. Yeah,
It's miserable.
yeah, go on. Sorry.
That's all right. Dominic and speak like Dickens. I want to read possibly next. I may pick a different Dickens because there are a few obviously that you've mentioned today. Even though I'm like, oh yeah, maybe. But Dombey and Son. I think I really want to read Dombey and Son. And then I've got one that I'm not entirely sure I want to read. And likewise with so Middlemarch, obviously by George Eliot, because it's like a chonkster. But I'm like, so many people love it though. Like I
Yeah.
know I don't think you did. You didn't like it, love it, did you?
I have tried this book several times over the years. I tried it for my A levels. I tried listening to the audiobook a few years back, and it's one that I definitely think I'm going to try one day, but today's
Maybe we should make this as something that me and you can read. Try and read at some point.
no.
No.
No, because I know that I'll just leave you behind. I'll be like, goodbye. You read this on your own. Yeah, yeah. It, you might really enjoy it, but I think that because it's one of those books for me where because I've tried it in the past,
Yeah,
and
I understand.
I have like this fear of going back into it and being like, oh
There's
god,
like a block, isn't there?
yeah. Sorry,
I
what's the
can.
fourth one?
And Deerbrook. Just this is one again that the lovely Leo. Leo always loves Deerbrook, and also there's a few other. I'm sure
Oh,
there's a few other booktubers that mentioned
okay,
Deerbrook.
so I'm
That's
gonna
a chunk.
I'm gonna flip my list on its head now and start with the last book I wrote down, which is Deerbrook by Harriet Martineau.
Psychic Charlie's.
Um, but for me, yeah, Leo does mention it a lot, but I think it was one of the group reads for Victober a few years ago.
Yeah, I think it
And
was.
so I
Yeah,
downloaded the Kindle edition, but you know me and my Kindle. You know that Kindle has tons of great books on there that I'm never going to read.
yeah.
And so because it was the Kindle, I just kind of forgot it was there. Then I have, maybe that's the book that we should try and read together. Maybe that's the chunky book. Maybe,
Probably not this year because we're
oh,
not both.
definitely not this year. There's only 13 weeks left of the year, and this is going to take us at least 52.
Yeah, maybe like the beginning of next year because we like to do like a big book at the beginning of the year.
Do we?
Well, I do. I always do like a big book at the beginning of the year. I don't know.
Mhm.
We'll see. We'll make it. We'll make plans.
We'll think
We'll
about
talk.
it.
We'll talk.
Then I have No Name by Wilkie Collins because I was looking through Wilkie Collins that I wanted to read in October. Naturally, I've read all of the nice short ones. Well, I've not read all the nice short ones, but I'm trying not to read the ones that people don't rate so highly. And people whose opinions I value have told me to read No Name, but this is a huge book.
How many pages?
I don't know how many pages. I looked it up though, and I was like, this is going to take me about 50 years. Charlie and I have looked at how long that book is, and the internet has given us different numbers ranging from 450 to 700. And so I don't know how long it is, but we know it's going to be lengthy. Finally, I want to read Lady Audley's Secrets by Mary Elizabeth Braddon because I know I like this type of Victorian literature. And again, it's been recommended for years, and I just haven't got to it yet. So
I haven't read this one either. Charlie, this is another one. We should probably try.
yeah,
I
there are
feel
so
like
many that we should try and get to.
everyone does go on about this one. So this one could be one I could be persuaded to try.
What's your favorite Bronte novel?
Favorite Bronte novel is The Tenant of Wildfell Hall. I just loved it. I read it last year. Just loved it.
You see, it used to be The Tenant of Wildfell Hall for me, and then when I reread it, I didn't care for it as much as I had liked. Agnes Grey, also by Anne Bronte. I mean, maybe if I went and reread Agnes Grey, I'd have a different opinion now as well. But at the moment, that's the one that is still the favourite one for me. Then we have a favourite Dickens novel.
Great Expectations, probably. Yeah,
Okay.
probably. I think I probably would say that because I did really love. I loved it so much when I like again like when I said when we read it, like listening to it, the experience of listening to it. I loved it so much, and but it's difficult with Dickens because he's got such a lot. Like his books, every time you read them, as soon as you're finished them, well, for me, I'm always like, oh my gosh, I loved it so much. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I know what my answer to this was a few years ago, but at the moment it's David Copperfield. And
Ah,
that is
really?
simply because of that time I spent demolishing the book, annotating it, and just, I'm still not happy that David and Steerforth didn't run away together and open a B&B in Brighton. I feel like they had the start of a great burgeoning relationship there, and just Victorian societal pressure stopped them from having the queer relationship they so deserved. But
I really, really love that book. I really like that was a great book. You can't like can't, no, I feel like that's quite like a good one for people, even though it's quite big.
yeah,
I do think like that's quite a good introduction one for
it
people, isn't
is
it?
really because of the way that he writes it. With it being
Yeah.
the first person narrator, similar to Great Expectations, that's one of the reasons they work well for getting into Dickens.
So readable, just so readable. I loved it.
I feel like we're both going to have the same answer for this next one, but let's go ahead and say it anyway. Favorite Hardy novel?
I mean, I've only read one, but it definitely was a favorite, Far from the Madding Crowd.
Yeah, same. It's Far from the Madding Crowd. I do know that I have like some attachment to this book simply because apparently years ago when they were filming one of the adaptations, my dad knew the farmer whose farm they filmed part of it in. That's the whole reason I read it the first time, and I was just lucky that it was a good book. Then we have favorite Gaskell novel,
So for the next two ones with Gaskell and who's the other one?
Trollope.
Trollope. Yeah, I don't have a favorite because I have read from both of them before, but I didn't like. I don't come for me, but the ones I've read weren't favorites, so I can't really say that.
Well, for
So
me, my favorite Gaskell novel is Cranford because, once again, it's the least tragic. It's about a small village and the gossip there and the women who live there. And I feel like it suits my sensibilities the most out of all of the Gaskell that I've read.
yeah.
And then my favorite Trollope novel, I've already mentioned, is Framley Parsonage. That's that, really. We did it. We reached the end of the video and we did it just in time before this Zoom call decides that we are going to be kicked out. We are going to be recording another video and that is going to appear on Charlie's channel. So I will leave a link in the description to send you over there. Have you got any final words, Charlie?
I want to say for people, if anyone's hanging around still, can you write in the comments about any suggestions for the Christmas cracker videos? If you've got anything you want us to see in the Christmas cracker videos this year, because we are planning it, starting to plan it now. We have got some ideas already, but if you want to see anything specific in the Christmas cracker videos, let us know in the comments.
And if you don't know what the Christmas Cracker videos are,
Yeah.
they are where Charlie and I come together throughout the month of December with weekly shows that we usually share jokes, we converse about Christmas, we share Christmas gift ideas, of which I try and shock Charlie every single year.
Yeah, which
And
always makes me
we,
laugh.
we just generally have a fun time in celebration of this pagan festival.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it's always loads of fun.
once again, everybody is I'm sure, incredibly grateful to see Charlie and Charlie back together again.
We're back together.
Because we just like to show people how it's done. If you would like to share some of your favorite Victorian classics or recommendations as well, please feel free to do so in the comments. Once again, thank you, Charlie, for joining me in this video. And we hope that you have enjoyed this video because until next time, that is all.